lostvayne.
This is the stencil I made for the lostvayne. I looked up a bunch of pictures of the lostvayne and pretty much just got the design from that. On the pommel and the guard, I'm cutting out these pieces because the pommel and the guard are going to be made out of foam and the blade is going to be made out of wood. I'm going to be using MDF wood for the blade. It's this really soft wood that's easy to cut through, sand, and it just makes it easier to work with. Make sure to tape your stencils. You'll get a more accurate copy that way. I'm using a 1 1/8 speed bore to make the holes. Now you want to drill all the holes first because like I said, the wood is really soft and you don't want it to break on you. And if the back of it looks like this, don't worry about it, you can just sand it later. Now that you have all the holes, cut the piece out carefully. Be especially careful with the handle. And trust me on this because this is actually attempt 2. First try, I totally rushed through it and broke it. I'm pretty sure this isn't how you use a portable sander, but this is how I'm using it because it's really fast. So, I mean, don't do it like this. But if you do, that's on you. You can use sandpaper, but just know that that takes forever. I'm then smoothing out both sides. The belt I'm using is 150 grit. This has nothing to do with the project, I just thought this looked cool because I'm 5. For the handle, you want to go for an oval shape. That way it's more comfortable in your hand. And I wouldn't necessarily suggest the portable sander for this because you could break the handle off, but it's the fastest way I know. Again, sandpaper exists. Or like a belt sander if you have one. So it should look something like this. It's like an oval looking shape and it should feel comfortable in the hand. I cut the blade portion off of the stencil. And now you're going to use that stencil to draw a line down the middle of both sides of the blade. On the top part of the blade, on all the images I found online, there was either a grimy looking one or like these lines. So I went with the lines. Don't freak out too much on the lines. I just looked at a bunch of pictures and just wung it. To engrave the lines, I'm going to be using a Dremel. And this is the bit I'll be using to engrave the lines. My only suggestion here is to try to stay as close to the line as you can. When I do this kind of stuff, I tend to have a pretty good grip on top of the Dremel and a more looser grip on the bottom. And the bottom of it is what you're using to guide you through the lines. That way they come out a little bit, more accurate. Also, don't carve that middle line. Yay! Get a piece of paper and put it underneath the blade. And then you trace. This is how we're going to do the pommel and the guard. And the two pieces should look something like this. Then I'll be using 10mm foam to make the pieces. Then you're going to trace both pieces under the foam and then flip them over and then trace those pieces again. Make sure to use a sharp blade for this. You're going to want both pieces to look the same and a dull knife could mess that up. With one of the guard pieces, line it up to where the guard should be. Then trace the blade onto the guard piece. Try to make sure the blade isn't moving while you're doing this. Leave a mark on each end of the line. Then mark those lines onto the other piece. Now using the lines that you marked onto the other piece, line it up to the blade. And then trace the blade again. And make sure to check if they line up. Now do everything you just did with the guard to the pommel. Now using the Dremel, you're going to want to remove a little bit of the piece where you marked off. You're only going to remove enough to where both foam pieces cover the wood piece. If the foam you're using has a textured side, make sure to take that off. Also make sure to mark which pieces go to one side and which go to the other side. On the guard piece, you're going to be removing a lot of foam, so just be careful to stay in the lines. And wear a respirator. And again, you're just taking enough to where both sides of the foam cover the piece of wood. I'm going to be using contact cement to glue the foam to the wood. Also wear a respirator for this. With the Dremel, you're going to round out the ends. Rounding out those edges make it look a lot better, but mainly you want to make sure that the pommel and the guard look like one piece. So you really want to work on making sure that you can't really see the seams. I printed out the symbol to fit the guard, and then I taped that onto cardstock. I then taped that to the middle of the guard. Then with a needle, I traced the logo onto the foam. Because the logo is really small, the needle really helps you get a better copy. Then with a blade, lightly cut over the marks you left with the needle. Okay, so I'm an idiot and I forgot to hit record on this next part, so I'm going to show you what I did on another piece of foam. So to really bring out those lines, you're going to use a heat gun. They're really cheap and you can get them at pretty much any hardware store. So what you're going to do is once you have your lines, you're going to get your heat gun on a high heat and you're just going to keep passing over until the lines come up. Don't leave it on one spot for too long though, because you'll burn the foam. For the piece above the guard, I just drew a triangle. I then took that stencil and put it onto 2mm foam. I'm going to bevel these sides of the piece, and then the part that touches the guard I'm going to leave alone. I'm then going to mark where the pieces are going to go so I know where the contact cement is going to go. I'm going to start painting the blade, so I'm going to cover the guard with painter's tape. First I'm going over it with Plasti Dip. This is how I hang it out to dry. And with painter's tape, I'm now covering the top half of the blade. This is the spray paint I used for the silver part of the blade. Once the paint has dried, I'm using the painter's tape to cover up the silver part of the blade. This is the paint I used for the green part of the blade. And I'm not putting a ton of green on this because I still want the design lines to be black. And now I'm going to use acrylic paint to paint the handle, the guard, and the pommel. And I'm using painter's tape to cover the blade. This is the paint I'm using. You're going to want to do a few layers of this so the color really pops out. To paint the emblem, I'm using black paint. I'm also using a really small brush, and the paint is acrylic. This is the fabric I'm using for the handle. To glue the fabric, I'm using super glue. That's why I'm wearing gloves, because last time I glued my fingers together. Now you're going to put a little bit of super glue on the top, and then you're going to wrap that with the fabric. Once you wrap it around once, super glue it again. Then you're going to slightly lower the thread, and then halfway through the handle, you're going to twist it. You're going to do the exact same thing on the other side, but then once you finish that side, you're going to lower it again and then just repeat the process over and over and over until you get to the bottom. Once you get to the bottom, super glue the thread to the piece of wood. Then wrap it around and super glue that piece to the fabric, and then wrap it around again and super glue that again. And then just cut the fabric and super glue any stray pieces down. And now you're done with lostvayne. And now to the sheath. First you want to trace the blade. I'm then adding about a 1/2 inch to the copy of the blade. The foam I'm using for this is about a 1/2 inch thick, so that's what I'm just using to trace the line. I'm transferring over the copy onto 10mm foam. There's going to be a total of 3 pieces out of the 10mm foam, and then 1 piece of a 5mm foam. One of the 10mm pieces of foam is just going to be the outline of the sheath. The 5mm piece is also just going to be the outline of the sheath. Once you have all the pieces cut, just make sure they all fit. On the textured side of the 10mm foam pieces, you're going to want to remove that textured stuff off the edges. This is so the glue will hold better. Again, I'm using contact cement to glue all the pieces together. Once you start stacking them on, just make sure that everything is lined up. I'm covering the hole with paper because I'm going to Dremel the edges, so I don't want a bunch of dust in there. And here I'm just rounding out the edges and cleaning out the seams. Using the stencil of the sheath, I made the emblem of the dragon. I then taped the stencil to the sheath. I then traced it with a needle. And then lightly marked it with a blade. Then I passed over it with a heat gun to seal the foam and make the lines really pop out. On the pointed side of the sheath, I drew this line and made a stencil out of it. I then marked that on both sides of the sheath, and then I just connected it all together. Then with a blade, I lightly went over it again, and then used a heat gun to make the lines pop out again. Here I'm just using a cheap apple barrel green acrylic paint, and then for the gold I'm just using the same acrylic that I used earlier. With a fine brush, I'm filling in all the details of the dragon with green acrylic paint. Thanks for watching! If you like this, make sure to like and subscribe. And if you have any suggestions on what you'd like to see me do next, leave it on the comments below. Bye!